that task force recommended 221 recommendations that require administrative action. It also recommended a further 178 recommendations which require funding, but do not require any changes in law or policy. The task force recommended another 177 recommendations, which may not require funding, but require legislative and policy changes. And finally, the task force recommended 23 recommendations in connection with the National Police Service, not the Kenya Prison Service. 23 of them that require consultations and concurrence with the National Security Council. We have, in the period when I have been the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, we have been able to take action on some of the recommendations that did not require legal or policy changes. For example, we've rolled out a massive police equipment modernization program, which will be rolled out in 5 years. And already, under my leadership, we were able to convince the government and the National Treasury to allocate 7 billion shillings, which has already been spent to buy air and land assets to assist officers who have been exposed to great danger, those that are helping to keep the country safe in the front line, in the fight against terror, the fight against banditry and other sophisticated organized crimes. And therefore, this equipment is already up and running, especially mine resistance, ambush-protected vehicles, armored personnel carriers, personal protection equipment, and also aerial unmanned vehicles, which are commonly known as drones. And we've been able to restore the police air wing, which had collapsed. And we have some of the aircrafts which are now operational and helping us with air surveillance. And we have also, hoping in the next financial year, if I am approved by this House, we'll be able to purchase additional gunship helicopters to help us finish the remaining work in terms of the fight against terror, the fight against banditry and other organized crimes. Mr. Speaker, I also need to point out that because of the grave issues around leadership and succession management and career progression in the National Police Service, during my 21 months as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, we've been able to put in place, operationalize the National Police Leadership Academy, which we opened, His Excellency the President opened in Ngong. And this is the academy that is helping us put together a curriculum that will help us put in place short courses, professional courses to retool, reskill our police officers, especially those that are in leadership, and also provide a fast-track process of identifying, nurturing leadership among our police officers. And therefore, going forward, with the academy now operational, we believe that in the next few years, we're going to inculcate not only fast succession management and career progression program, but also we're going to have a very motivated leadership within our police officers. We have also, of course, taken action around welfare issues. Already the increments for the first increments that were proposed by the task force have already been put in place. We have also, in terms of giving motivation to our officers, also operationalized the National Police Service Hospital, which is supposed to take care of those who are injured in the front line so that they are not exposed to health or even subsequent risks when they visit ordinary hospitals. So by and large, that's what we've done. And finally, on the proposals that require legislative reforms and policy reforms, we have formulated about 6 pieces of legislation which are ready. They are just waiting for stakeholder participation, and then they'll be conveyed to Parliament through Cabinet. And if I can highlight this as I end that response, Mr. Speaker, they include, number 1, the National Police Service Amendment Bill 2024, the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill 2024, the National Forensic Laboratory Bill, Services Bill 2024, we have also formulated a bill which will also assist us in the leadership and the command oversight in the National Police Service. I submit.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question to the CS nominee relates to just where he stopped on the legal and legislative proposals that he was considering before his exit from the ministry, and more so around the issue of implementation of Article 37 of the Constitution on the right of Kenyans to picket, assemble, demonstrate peaceably. And CS, you have seen in the recent past a lot of confrontations between members of the public and the police. And it's my view that principally why this has been so is because you have failed to designate picketing corners. And Kenyans imagine you can picket anywhere and everywhere, including in some areas that you consider restricted areas. I would want to hear what is it that you would intend to do if you are reappointed and approved by this committee to ensure that there are no more confrontations between members of the public who want to peaceably assemble and picket and the police. 2, there seems to have been a complete breakdown in administrative and security structures in the country. And I say that in view of when you came into office, the Shakahola massacre, where up to now we don't know how many Kenyans lost their lives in Shakahola. We have seen in the recent past Kware here in Nairobi. In a country like ours, how is it possible where you have chiefs, assistant chiefs, nyumba kumi, and all the structures and security and administrative structures that we have, that 20, 40 people can be killed around one small area like Kware in the full review of the security and administrative structures without government coming to know. And the same thing happened to Shakahola. And I would want to hear what is it that you would intend to do to make sure that there is restoration of administrative and security structures right at the village level to secure our country.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is true there is work that requires to be done to ensure that the people of Kenya enjoy their constitutional right and freedom to assemble, picket, and demonstrate, and present petitions to public authorities, while at the same time maintaining public order and also ensuring the rights of other people. Before I was dismissed on the 11th of July, I had actually finalized the draft regulations to the Public Order Act, which will be the statutory instrument to be processed for purposes of giving effect to the enjoyment of that right, not to curtail that right, because a statute cannot curtail a constitutional right, but to give effect to how that right will be exercised. Those draft regulations, when completed, will be able to help the police do a number of things. Number one, obligate the police to escort protesters and provide security for them, but also to ensure protesters don't run amok and overrun members of the public who are not protesting. Number three, it will require those protesting to notify the police and tell, and also give the number of protesters so that the appropriate arrangements are made. It will also obligate public institutions in all arms of government, all public institutions, to designate an area within their premises or within the vicinity of their premises where a group of protesters who want to present petitions can stand, demonstrate, and present petitions to that public office or that public institution. Those regulations also will of course ask protesters to also be responsible for their own conduct, and therefore we hope that if I am approved, this is a low-hanging matter. It's something that we can process in the shortest time possible to avoid a situation like what we've had in the past 1 month of protests which are unmanaged and which have exposed us to deaths and destruction of property and a lot of inconvenience to the people of Kenya. On the second question by the leader of the majority party, it is true that we have experienced a number of security incidents that should not have happened in the first place. And let me say that first and foremost, the Shakahola incident didn't happen when it became public. It happened over quite a number of years, and it's an indictment actually on our ability as a country to be able to prevent some of these sophisticated crimes from hurting our people. I am on record to having apologized on behalf of previous and the present administration for that breach, because the radicalization and the criminal activity around Shakahola began in 2019, 2020. But the manifestation in terms of people dying and being buried was something that happened sometimes in 2022. And the Shakahola incidents will remain the most tragic security breach in the history of our country. We have never had a security breach of that magnitude in our country. We have learned the lessons. 2 days ago, the task force that the president had appointed has helped to give us some of the recommendations on what we need to do to avoid that going forward. But also, we believe that the public officials, including security officers who are in charge, must also have their day in being made accountable. We had proposed the establishment of a commission of inquiry to help us put together the accountability process so that we can have recommendations on prosecution and other action. But the commission of inquiry was stopped by our courts, and we were unable to move. But with or without the commission of inquiry, I want to assure the people of Kenya, if I am approved, one of my priorities will be to make sure that the accountability for the crimes in Shakahola by public officials, including security managers of all arms, of all agencies of the state, must proceed as a way of making sure that we do not have this kind of thing happening again. It is true also recently we had an incident which is actively under investigations around Kware area. Again, the same reasons, gaps in the Ngao and Nyumba Kumi structures, and also our intelligence collection ability. And I just want to say that now that we have finalized the proposals and we know what we need to do to reform our National Police Service, my next assignment, if I am approved by this House, will be to initiate far-reaching reforms in the national government administration system to ensure that we restructure the Ngao system, make it more responsive, modernize it, and distribute it to the lowest level in a manner which helps us to avoid incidents like this when we have serious security breaches, yet we have government officials paid by the people of Kenya to make sure that the country is safe. So I want to admit those were very unfortunate incidents, and national security being a work in progress and a perpetual project, we have learned the lessons, and we are going to make sure that we strengthen and seal the gaps to ensure that we make our homeland safer than it has been before. Thank you.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the nominee, Professor Abraham, that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, he is one of the two people who have been reappointed to the cabinet to the same docket that they were serving previously, the last 2 years. I want to ask you a question, Professor, that what do you think makes you feel that you can serve in that docket again? Because why I'm asking that question is because if you look at what happened in the last 2 months in this country, the demonstrations and the kind of things that happened, in my view, you look like somebody who was lost. Your presence was not being felt. Your omnipresence was not being felt, if I may say so, because you could see abductions were happening, human rights abuses were happening, but the minister's voice was not being heard in that situation. What do you think, what makes you think that you can serve again in the same docket? But the next question is that you have also seen widely, you have been widely accused the last 2 months or the last 1 year that you've presided over human rights abuses from time you've been appointed CS till last month. Particularly what happened, for example, on 25th of July 2024, and also during the Azimio demonstrations last year. More than 75 Kenyans lost their lives. And last month also, more than 50 Kenyans lost their lives. So there's a feeling that the National Police response to protest is stuck in the old way of doing things. So the question is, to what extent do you think ministerial responsibility for the brutality meted on Kenyans by security organs? At what level do you think you can take responsibility for that? What new ways are you going now to do to stop that? So my question is, in spite of all these abuses that have happened, in spite of all the problems that Kenyans have encountered, what is this new idea that you will employ this time if you are approved by this House? Because one of the things we are looking at, Professor, Chairman, is the suitability of the person to hold that office. What makes you think you are suitable in spite of all those problems that you have encountered the last 2 months? Thank you, Chair.
Professor, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and honorable members. I was in office for 21 months, 623 days. I can account for each and every day of my stay in office. I woke up every day, and my focus has been to ensure that our country is safe. I have risen before dawn, every day including Sundays, and gone to sleep very late, simply because of the demands of our homeland security. I believe that I am suitable for reappointment because during those 21 months, during those 623 days, I have been able to keep the country fairly safe, especially in the fight against terror. Previously, we had an escalation around 2021-2022 of terror attacks in northern Kenya and the Boni Enclave. And in the past 2 years, approximately, we've had stability in northern Kenya and Lamu. I believe I am suitable, Honorable Speaker, because the crime of banditry has been reduced significantly. In my estimation, by more than 75%, even if pockets of insecurity continue to be experienced. And we do know where the gaps are and what needs to be done to even bring this problem to a complete end. Mr. Speaker, I have visited all the 47 counties. Some of the counties numerous times. I've been to Lamu 21 times in 21 months. I've been to Samburu 8 times. I've been to Baringo 13 times. I've been to many other counties. And therefore, I have not been lazy. On the enclave, and in the past 2 years, approximately, we've had stability in northern Kenya and Lamu. I believe I am suitable, Honorable Speaker, because the crime of banditry has been reduced significantly. In my estimation, by more than 75%, even if pockets of insecurity continue to be experienced. And we do know where the gaps are and what needs to be done to even bring this problem to a complete end. Mr. Speaker, I have visited all the 47 counties, some of the counties numerous times. I've been to Lamu 21 times in 21 months. I've been to Samburu 8 times. I've been to Baringo 13 times. I've been to many other counties. And therefore, I have not been lazy. I've been diligent, and I've conducted myself within the parameters of Article 7. Which requires me to conduct myself in a manner that brings honor to the nation and dignity to the office I hold. I have worked with officers at the headquarters, but I've also sat down in numerous meetings to work with officers at regional, county, and sub-county levels to make sure that we share decision-making processes and decision implementation processes. I believe, Mr. Speaker, the question has been directed to the events of the recent weeks. And I want to respond as follows. That the reason that I didn't talk today is because the events the Honorable Member is referring to were mainly operational issues. The work of the Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, as envisaged in Article 245 of the Constitution, is to give the organs of national security that fall under that ministry policy direction and policy guidance, and in particular because we are talking about the police. Mr. Speaker, the police is under independent command, Article 245, paragraph 2. There are only two people who can give the Inspector General of Police directives. First, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, but only on policy issues. Number two, the the Director of Public Prosecutions in matters in investigations of criminal activities. Other than that, operational matters are handled by the command of the National Police Service, and therefore the Minister doesn't give operational directives. We have communicated the policy during my time in office, the policy of the Kenya Kwanza administration on policing, which includes zero tolerance on extrajudicial killings, zero tolerance on abuse of human rights, and restraints in the use of force. Limited only, the use of force being limited only to cases contemplated in the Constitution and the National Police Service Act and the schedule thereto in the defense of life of the officer or the life of the people of Kenya. Therefore, it is unfortunate that during a recent protests, we witnessed the death of 42 Kenyans. We also had injuries, 486 civilians and 385 police officers were injured. We had about 1,387 arrests. We had 54 police cars destroyed and 110 motor vehicles belonging to the people of Kenya also destroyed in those protests. And therefore, I want to submit as follows, that the operational responsibility of policing lies with the command of the National Police Service. It is my estimation that on a broader scale of things, generally, the police tried their best to protect the country against mobs of criminals, arsonists, and other dangerous people, including those who visited Parliament and wanted to kill parliamentarians and other people. The police did their best. And in the event, as it is possible, that any officer went beyond what is allowed in terms of the use of force, it is now the work of the independent police oversight authority and other accountability agencies to help the country to bring to closure the issue of justice for excess use of force. I want to submit as follows, Mr. Speaker, that even beyond the police having independent operational command, the issue of the use of firearms by a police officer is individual. If you read the National Police Service Act and Schedule 6 to that Act, every police officer has individual responsibility on how they use firearms. You cannot, the Inspector General of Police will not be there to tell the police, the officer, shoot this one, don't shoot this one. There will be an operational order that will generally guide the police officer. So the accountability of